Hello everyone, I'm so excited because today we are talking about my favorite Gilmore Girls character. I had to put on my tiara because this character is the absolute queen, but she has some issues and we're going to talk about that today. The character that we're talking about today is Paris Geller. So your upbringing has a lot to do with how you end up, and Paris Geller is no different. Paris grew up really rough, and that is the number one thing that I want to talk about. So at the beginning, we meet Paris, and her parents are going through a horrible divorce while she's at Chilton. And it ends up with her being a part of a massive rumor mill. And at the time, Madeline and Louise are her friends, and there was a specific comment that Madeline made. She said, "Paris's parents' divorce is getting very ugly." And Louise replied, "Her dad should have just paid her mom everything she wanted and this whole thing would have been over." I believe these rumors contributed a lot to her lower self-esteem, and they fed some of the issues that we're going to talk about later on in this episode. Eventually, Paris gets sick of the rumors and she catches Lorelai kissing Max, Rory's teacher. So she decides to spread rumors about that so that everybody can stop focusing on her parents' divorce. When Rory comes and asks her why she would do that, this is what she tells her. In season 6, Paris's parents flee the country because they're being chased down by the IRS for tax fraud and tax evasion. This leads to her living with her nannies and not really having a lot of parental guidance growing up. The second reason that I feel bad for Paris is because she works so hard to prove herself into her parents. One of my favorite episodes is called Getting Puffed Up. And in this episode, Paris goes on a whole rant about how her mom was a puff and her grandmother was a puff, and basically she has to be a puff. I can't imagine like how much stress and pressure this was on her, and you can really see how it's made an impact on her personality overall. Her parents also didn't show up to a lot of events, probably because of the tax fraud and tax evasion. Because of that, Lorelai ended up being kind of like a surrogate parent for Paris and showing up to all of her events. Paris also had a lot of pressure on her from her parents to get into Harvard because, once again, that was kind of her family legacy, which is why when she didn't get into Harvard, she has a huge breakdown that we're going to talk about later on in this episode. And I really think that Paris's pressure to get good grades so that she can get into Harvard and please her parents is one of the reasons why she made everyone in the show into a competition, including Rory, who she didn't even like at first. The next character flaw with Paris that I think led to her breakdowns is that she wasn't really well liked. So at the beginning of one of the episodes, Rory and Paris are part of the beta club at their school. The beta club is a big deal, and it's where all of the juniors, seniors, sophomore, freshmen get together to kind of brainstorm ideas for the year and to make sure everything is running smoothly. Paris comes in strong like a dictator, and it ends up ruffling the feathers of some of the other people in beta club.
Rory, super! Could you step in here for a sec? Oh, okay, thanks. Just so lucky I caught you.
What is this?
The supplementary student council meeting, silly.
But Paris canceled that.
She did, didn't she?
Mr. Hunter, there's been a mistake. Paris canceled this meeting and...
I know, Roy, but Francie approached me and said there was an issue she planned to discuss at the meeting today, and it has a bit of a ticking clock on it.
Francie, so good of you to stop by. I know how busy you are. Gum, you've had one goal since the beginning of the year.
To achieve the perfect liquid lime.
To take Paris down.
And to achieve the perfect liquid lime.
I tried to intervene. I tried to smooth the path between both sides, but you know what? That's over.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it is. I'm finished being your go-between.
And after a while, they decide to stage a sort of coup to go behind her back and get her thrown out of the beta club. Thankfully, she doesn't get thrown out, but it's just one of the first times we see that Paris isn't really getting along with her peers. Later on in the season, we see her in the newspaper editor position, and once again, she is being a really harsh newspaper editor, kind of dictatorship, and running it to where people are scared to even go to the bathroom. People in the newspaper decide to overthrow Paris, and they stage a coup once again.
Paris? Oh, holy crap.
I can't talk now.
What happened to this place? There's no air in here or light.
Ship of fools.
Paris, the paper's not gonna come out.
Of course it is.
How? Nothing's done.
I'm working on it.
Alone?
I can do it alone. I've been doing it alone for months. No man is an island, but this woman is.
But Paris,
I've got it all scheduled out. As long as I stick to the schedule, everything's going to be fine. At 12:30.
let me see that. Paris, there's like 100 hours of work on this and 5 hours till the paper comes out.
We'll get it done.
Well, you better get bitten by that radioactive spider pretty damn fast here.
But this time it's successful, and Rory ends up being the newspaper editor. This is what causes a big schism in their friendship. But it seems like things tend to go in a pattern with Paris. She gets hired on as a leadership role. She becomes a dictator. She gets stressed out, and then she gets overthrown. And it's really sad to see this happen over and over again. Also, Paris doesn't really have that many good friends. Madeline and Louise, although they are kind of friends with her during Chilton, they make a lot of fun of her, and they're like always smirking or rolling their eyes at things that she says. And they often talk about her lack of a social life. And I really think it's kind of like giving mean girl energy, but I want to keep you around because why not? And then same for Rory. Rory often makes snide comments about Paris as well. And she kind of treats her like her crazy friend. Every time that somebody's talking about Paris, it's like, oh, Paris, you know, that's just how she is. And it's just like, as a real friend, it seems like she should have treated her a little bit better. But I don't really like Rory. So comment down below if you want to see me do a video on Rory Gilmore and all the problematic behaviors that she had, because she had quite a few of them. Another way that Paris's upbringing contributed to her overall self-esteem is that she felt unwanted by men. I specifically remember the Getting Puffed Up episode where basically the girls are going through an initiation. As part of the initiation, the girls get woken up during the middle of the night and they get kidnapped. And Lorelai tells Rory, she's like, you know, put on your pretty pajamas tonight, do your makeup, do your hair, and then fall asleep, because they're gonna come in through the middle of the night and they're gonna take you somewhere. And so Rory does that, but none of the other girls do. And so they show this scene where Paris is like, oh, is that what you look like when you first wake up? And she's got like face cream all over her face, and you know, she just generally just looks like anybody would look when they first wake up. And Rory was like, yeah, this is what I look like. And Paris was like, I'm doomed. And this is kind of like the first time we see that Paris is a little bit more insecure about how she looks. And then later on, Paris has to take her cousin to the winter formal. Funnily enough, nobody really knows that that was Paris's cousin, but then she ends up like screaming it out for some reason during the dance. Then everybody does know. So this kind of brings me on to my next way that Paris's upbringing has affected her, is that she has bad luck with men. So Paris Geller had some of the worst relationships on all of Gilmore Girls. Her shining moment was her relationship with Asher. So Asher was a professor at her university, and I think he's like 60 years old. And Paris Geller decides that she's going to date Asher. They end up dating for a little while, and Rory feels a lot of intrepidation and nervousness about trying to keep this a secret. But she definitely does talk to Paris, and she's like, this is just weird. Why are you dating somebody who's so much older than you? And Paris is like, I love him and I care about him, so whatever. Well, later on, he ends up dying, and Paris Geller is so depressed by that. And I feel so sad that he actually had to die, but mostly I feel sad that Paris felt like she had to go so much older than her to find acceptance from men. Then later on, Paris gets with Doyle, and I honestly think they were such a cute couple. Just the way that they were able to communicate and how he was able to bring her down from like a level 10,000 to like a level 5 was so cute. I really thought that they were gonna go the long haul, but then in the year in the life, we hear that Paris actually divorced Doyle, and so she never ended up getting the happy ending that she wanted. And I feel bad about that, because I wish that Paris Geller had gotten love like so many of the other characters on the show. And the last way that Paris's upbringing really affected her is that she was always anxious. So whenever we see Paris, we see her as the overachieving baddie. She's that girl that's going to join 54 extracurriculars and have a literal layout and plan of how she's going to do all of them before she goes on to graduate college and go to medical school.
Okay, I will check out the Papasaurus project at the Peabody, but there is no way I'm signing up for the LSAT.
Sure you are.
And this is good because she ends up being really successful in life, but it also wasn't that great because sometimes it was concerning. For example, in college, she actually ends up having to move in with her therapist because of all of the stress that she puts on herself academically and physically and emotionally. Also, that one moment where she doesn't get what she wants and she doesn't get into Harvard, she ends up going in front of the whole school and having a breakdown and talking about private things like losing her virginity. And it's just a very really sad moment for Paris Geller. Lorelai actually seems like one of the only characters that can get Paris to relax, and I actually really love the relationship dynamic between Lorelai and Paris because I feel like when they were paired together, it was really helpful for Paris to have somebody in her life who really cared about her, and I kind of wish that they had kept that up in the revival. So overall, I love Paris Geller, and I think she was a really important character because she showed that if you are a girl boss and if you really work hard, then you can have a successful life. Like in a year in the life, Paris Geller is making money and she has 2 kids and she's doing well for herself. But it was also a cautionary tale that sometimes when you put success and metrics over everything else, you end up having broken relationships and brokenness in your life. And so that's why I love Paris Geller. Comment down below, did you like Paris or did you find her to be really annoying? Because I find that those are the 2 main ideas that you have people say when they're talking about Paris. Now, like always, let's go on to the moment of inspiration. So today's moment of inspiration comes from Isaiah 40:31, which says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint." And then there's another one that I like, Psalm 71:5, that says, "For you, O Lord, are my hope, my trust, O Lord, from my youth." So right now, there's a lot of craziness going on in the world. One of my favorite apps is on the cusp of possibly being banned, and I find a lot of joy and hope from that app. The world is on fire on one half, and then over where we are is very, very icy and cold, and it's just a lot going on. And I feel like sometimes it can be really hard to keep holding on. And one thing I loved about Paris Geller was that despite her bad upbringing and everything that was happening, she kept moving on and she ended up being successful. And so hopefully this is a message to you that if you're going through something, that's okay, but lean into your resources, lean into God, lean into your local church, lean into all of the things that you have around you, lean into your community if you have one, but don't let yourself struggle and suffer in silence. And this life is really just not meant to be lived alone. So I hope that helps. If you have a question, you can reach out to me. I've left my email that you can contact me in the description down below. Anyway, let me pray us out. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for waking us up this morning and starting us on our way. Lord, I pray for everyone around the country who's just being affected by inclement weather. May you be with them and help them to get the resources that they need. I pray that you would equip the first responders to be able to get to the scene safely and quickly and to be able to rescue people. And I pray that you just give us all strength, as many of us are fighting with, winter blues and seasonal affective disorder and just a lot of general other things. And I pray that you would just be with us and go before us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Anyway, so that was today's video on Paris Geller. If you liked it, make sure you give this video a big fat like. It lets the algorithm know that you like this content so I can recommend it to more people. Also, make sure you watch this video or this video in the cards, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.